This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut and normally Sebastian Romero, but he will return at some point. So we've got a lot to unpack for you today. So on today's Weigh-In, we're going to unpack one being, is Shakur Stevenson ready for Tank? Or is Shakur Stevenson ready for any tough-worthy opponent? And that Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor, another one to break down. So that is more than likely this week's weigh-in. And then there's always going to be the occasional and whatever else comes up during the time of recording. So with that being said, that is this week's weigh-in. So let's get right into it. On this one, we're gonna break down that Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor first. So if we jump right into that, first and foremost, not the result we thought were going to happen. We thought Amanda Serrano could have the fight, but I got to give it to Katie Taylor. She did good. I think the difference here is, I think the difference in that Amanda Serrano corner is, her trainer was telling her she's up. I think Amanda Serrano, when you look at the scorecard, she was going to need those last two rounds. And that was something that they weren't even thinking about it. They were like, you're up. One of the first things we talked about is being your best self. And as we talk about being your best self, that is one of the things we like to talk about in terms of saying, when we talk about being your best self, one of those things is you got to understand, don't think you're up and you can settle. You got to continue to bring it to them. And that's what we kind of got. That's what I got out of that Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, because she wasn't continuing to bring it to her because, you got something, you got your trainer in your corner, which I think may or may not be family. But even then, that's irrelevant. Trainer's a trainer. Got trainer in your corner telling you you're up. So you're thinking, oh, I'm doing good. But even then, I'm gonna ding Amanda Serrano even more because you could tell, family, not family, but trainer was telling her, listen, come on, you got to give me that 1-2. It was a lot of stuff that they were saying in that corner that she was not doing. That he was saying, I'm not seeing it. So I don't understand if she thought she knew she could box this herself, but you have to trust your trainers. When you're in that ring, they see stuff. They know. And I kind of felt like there was not a lot of trust in the trainer for Amanda Serrano. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying there truly wasn't. I'm just saying there were a few times when he had to mention stuff round after round and said, I'm not seeing it. And it kind of feels like you're not doing it. And that's just one thing that when you kind of look at that, you kind of say, hey, that's something very interesting in terms of that. And when it comes in terms of something interesting, it very well becomes one of those things where you're like, wow, what's going on? What's going on here? And when we talk about things like that, it just really brought to me that like Amanda should have tried to do a little more trust in there, should have let loose a little more. I kind of felt like she was really putting her power to Katie Taylor. It kind of almost looked like Katie Taylor didn't like it. As the power was getting to her really well. In the exchange, I just felt like Amanda Serrano could have done a lot more. Should have, I kind of felt that way, that she should have done a lot more, let a little more loose. You have nothing to lose in this third fight. I kind of felt like she should have let loose a little more, that would have played to her favor. And when I say let loose, I mean, I don't mean like, like what we do when we have an episode where we kind of say a little too much, too non-friendly. I mean, like, get your lefts and hooks in there more, stack up the combinations. That's a lot of things I wasn't seeing. Like her trainer, I believe it was her father, was saying, throw that 1-2. We weren't, I'm with him. I wasn't seeing it enough. You need to double the jab. There were things he was talking about that I definitely agreed on, that I thought, yeah, we need to see this over the rounds. We need to see that double jab. We need to, because you're gonna tell when you keep the jab at distance, it was working early. It was working, but when she started to lack on using the jab, it's when we started to notice Katie Taylor started to start reigning supreme there. And that's because you have to, when you're in a situation, you have to, first and foremost, they're your trainer. You picked them for that fight. They're your trainer. You got to trust them. You can't. And second of all, your trainer shouldn't be going through saying, you're up, you're up, you're up. Only time a trainer should be saying something in that nature is when you're down. Say, hey, we're down in this fight. We need something. We're going to need something here. We're not winning right now. Don't tell your fighter they're up. There's no settling, in the sports of combat sports. This is UFC too. There's no settling because you may need that round. You may not. You don't know how the judges are scoring it. So always think, hey, you're doing good. You're doing good, but we need to keep bringing it. I want to keep winning these rounds. I want to leave no doubt in the judge's mind that this is a fight we should have won, or we're winning. And it just was one of those things where it's like, come on, you can't do stuff like that. You can't do stuff like that. You gotta put yourself in that situation where you say, no. I know I got to box. I know I got to, if you think I'm up, I'm probably not up, because I'm telling you, Amanda, had she took those last 2 rounds, she might have won the fight. Last 3, maybe 3-2, she might have won the fight because it was a close scorecard. One of the judges saw a tie, but the other 2, not so much. And I think she would have needed those last couple rounds. And you got somebody, I understand. I'm not trying to discredit the trainer. I'm not trying to discredit no trainer, but I'm saying, you're saying you're up. No, you're not up. You're not up. You're not up. You can't say you're up. I hear that too many times in a corner and the fighter loses. You're not up. In terms of it, you're not up. You got to do what's best for you in the fight, and you're not up. Don't ever think you could give a round. The only time you could do that is I can understand if, okay, you knock them down in the first round, you knock them down again in the fourth, you're walking them down, you can visibly see that there is no way they're in this. You're walking them down. Then I say, okay, hey, you're up. But don't say, hey, you're up, and the fighter, the fighter across the ring is not throwing a Hail Mary, then you're not up. The fighter across the ring thinks they're still in this. And then you gotta still be in it too. Don't think, oh, I'm up. I just don't like that. I've never liked that use in the corner saying, hey, we're up. I understand you say we're up by a round, but we gotta still keep, I just don't like the use of that. I just never have, and because you can't turn around and tell your fighter, you're up. Because you may think that, but you don't know how the judges are gonna score it. And I'm not saying one was wrong versus the other, because at the time that was said, she could have been up, but you just don't use those terms. I feel like that's just like, you don't say it, you just don't say it. That's not something you say. Like, you just don't say. Like, you should never use those terms. You're up. You at this point, that's something you use like in the last round, really. But then even then, you shouldn't use it. This is something we see many of times before, and we cannot. I can't stress this enough. You're saying you're up in a fight is not really not a word to be using, unless it's truly been something that you're confident that somebody's up. If you're not confident, don't go say you're up, baby, you're up. Because that's what the trainer was saying, and I didn't agree with it. At the time, I thought it was a closer fight, and I'm like, I don't think you should be saying you're up. You're doing well. I think you could say you're doing well, and we might be up. You say, hey, you're doing well. I think we're up at this point. That's, not saying, hey, we're up. Understand that? No. I just don't like the use of saying we're up, because it brings the fight and it turns it in a way that just isn't. It just isn't one that I'm sitting there wanting to pounce on, saying you're up. No, but all in all, I think it was a good event. I think that Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, it brought it every second. You look at Katie Taylor had an outstanding amateur career, very well on the circuit. People like that are very tough to beat. And you just got to say to yourself, those people that they know how to box, and they're gonna be hard to beat by points because they know how to box the fight. And when people like that know how to box a fight, they're very, very hard to beat for many of reasons because they're used to boxing their fights. They're not used to just going in there and just letting and unleashing themselves. They're used to boxing the fight and being able to win round by round, to the judging, and that's when people know how to box and really move their feet really well. Though they're tough. They're really tough opponents to beat. They're really tough to beat, and that's why I say stuff like that. That was just my partake of that. Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor. All great things for Amanda Serrano. It was a good fight. It was a close one. It wasn't as bloody as the last one, but it was a close, good fight. And if we go over and talk about, Shakur, I'm gonna tell you, after seeing his fight this weekend, he's not ready for Tank. He's not ready for Tank. He's not ready for Tank. I'm gonna tell you right now, Shakur is not ready. Shakur faces Tank right now. The way he looked after that fight on Saturday, let me tell you, Shakur gets beat. And more than beat, I'll tell you, Shakur gets knocked out. He's not ready for Tank right now. He's not ready for Tank. He is in no way ready for Tank. I don't even think he's ready for let me see. Let me find his name for y'all. Floyd Sheffield. I don't even think K Austin. I don't even think he's ready for K Austin. I think K Austin go in there and mess him up. I think right now that was a I don't think that was a good fight from Shakur. Now, I don't think he's ready for Tank. I don't think he's ready. I think at this point you got to reevaluate yourself because you're not ready for Tank. Turn around, Eddie Hearns saying they want to schedule Tank. You're not ready for him. You're not. I think Shakur Stevenson is not about to go and shock the world and do the Lamont Roach. I don't think that's going to happen. Lamont Roach shocked us all and showed us, hey, I know what I'm doing. My name's Lamont. I'm good. I know how I'm supposed to be. I know I'm deserving to be here. And I don't think Shakur is that guy. After seeing that fight, I don't care how many disagree with me. If you saw that fight, full fight, then you'll understand why I say that. And if you didn't, he still won. I'll spoil it for you. He still won, but from what I saw, I don't think he's ready for Tank. I don't think he's ready for Tank for what I saw. And I stand by my words because of what happened. I don't think he's ready for our boy Tank. He ain't ready for Tank. He's not ready for Tank. You talk about wanting to line Shakur up with good things and make mega star fights, but I think right now you got to say, okay, you go against Tank, you can't take all them hits. We understand that the most thing is the hits because Tank likes to throw heavy, big, powerful punches, which many have not been able to last. Obviously, we know Lamont Roach was able to come in there and do and surprise us all. But the thing here is, I don't think Shakur can do that. As of what I saw Saturday, I don't think he can do that. Eddie Hearn thinks he can. He's trying to. I understand you want to line up big money fights, and that's great. As the fan, we love to see that stuff, but I don't think that's going to happen. Hey, what does everybody think about this? This that Ricky Hatton might be possibly trying to schedule himself another fight. Trying to come out and schedule another fight, and I'm going to double check that to make sure I get y'all the fact check on this one. The fact check on this one. So it was a report, but it might possibly have been just rumored. And no, it is true. Ricky Hatton is trying to fight again. So when we talk about the stuff that happens with Rick, we talk about this. We talk about the some of the things on Instagram. Is there do boxers really retire? And I understand that statement from A to Z because it's true. Do they? But I think that was one thing I wanted to mention. Ricky Hatton getting back in there. We're getting some good stuff. The scheduling of boxing right now looks absolutely amazing. But the one thing I ask here is, some may not agree with me, and that's okay. That's okay. I like it. I love it. It's okay. Riddle me this: do we think that we will get Shakur Tank this year or next year? And when should we get it? I got my answer for you. I got it for you. I think yes, we're going to get Shakur Tank within this year, possibly next. Maybe I'm going to say maybe. Should we be getting it now? No, Shakur's not ready. So I think I understand you want to set it up. I understand that, but we gotta get a good Shakur if we're gonna do this right. You know what I mean? We got to get like a straight tight Shakur. And I say that because you can't be underestimating nothing. You can't be getting in there wobbling around because if you get stunned, Tank gonna knock you out. And that's something we can't have if Shakur want to do the Lamont Roach. You want to go in there, you want to beat him. I get it, but if you're gonna do the Lamont Roach, it's not gonna happen. And it was asked of me, through the socials of medias. Um, what if in some lavish reason we get Devin Haney Tank? First of all, Devin Haney will never be Tank. He will never be Tank. I'm gonna answer that question. I always answer any questions you guys, the fans, ask me on pod. Devin Haney will never be Tank. First of all, whatever happens between him and Garcia, I'm gonna say my famous word, Google it. Ryan still beat him. Regardless of whatever may pertain, Ryan still beat him. And regardless of what Garcia we have now, I just don't think Devin Haney will ever beat Tank. Let me just put that out there. So, with that being said, do I think Devin Haney is the better scheduling over Shakur? No, I definitely don't. I definitely think Devin Haney gets knocked out. I can definitively say Devin Haney gets knocked out against Tank. If they ever come to that, I would rather see Shakur because I think Shakur, if he could, if he gets himself right and really takes a tough series training camp, I think Shakur could possibly come in there. I'm not gonna say he's gonna do the Lamont Roach. I don't know he can go do all that, but he can go in there and make some noise. Make some noise. I get right now, I think he's not ready, but nonetheless, he could still you could still be not ready and make some noise. McGregor went and fought Floyd Money Mayweather, and whether people thought that was the right fight, hey, he made some noise. He didn't win, but he made some noise. I think a lot of people want to believe Shakur is the guy to do it, and I would agree with them. I want to believe Shakur could be the guy to do it, but I don't think Tank's gonna ever make the same mistakes he made during Lamont Roach. I think those little loopholes have probably already been fixed. You know what I mean? Lamont Roach came in there and tried to do what he thought he could do, and I think they're gonna fix all of that. Lamont went in there and did a good thing. He didn't win, but he did a good thing. But nor the Tank win, it was a tie. So we talk about that. That is the kind of, that's why I always say do the Lamont Roach. Go in there and surprise everybody. Would it be a surprise if Shakur went in there and was able to do what he could do? No. Will he do something like that right now? No. I'm gonna tell you why I say no. I say no because it's hard. It's gonna be hard for somebody like Shakur to go in there and do the and do something like that after what I saw Saturday. I say that in a very well way that after what I saw Saturday, that'll be hard. So that's something I talk about. That's something I say. That's something I get after. So with all that being put together, all that being said, do I think more than one most will happen? I think it's more likely that Tank wins the fight. And I think I'm going to say that because I know what kind of Tank Davis we could get. I think it's more than likely Tank wins that fight. And I'm telling you because Tank is a good competitor. Tank knows how to box. You know, whether many may say that's not true, whatever many may try to say, Tank knows how to box. Tank Davis knows how to do what he's got to do when he gets into the ring, except when it came to Lamont Roach. The judges gave him a blessing there by giving him that draw. I mean, by giving him that draw. Do I feel that was a draw? I kind of felt like Roach did what he had to do, but in the end, I'm not surprised by that either. So, in other words, yeah, but a lot of people are saying, well, this is another thing. I don't think we're going to get Shakur Tank this year because they're trying to schedule Lamont Roach versus Tank 2. They're trying to get that ran back before they even. A lot of people want to see that ran back. So I really think we're going to get that first before we get Shakur. I think we're going to get Roach 2 for Shakur, and that's going to be interesting. I'm going to tell you why it's going to be interesting because what kind of Tank we going to get? That's going to be the interesting factor here. What kind of Tank we going to get? Because that's going to make the difference when it comes to this. So that's going to be interesting to see what kind of Tank we get, to see what kind of Tank Davis come out and get in that event. And once we figure all that out, what kind of Tank Davis we get, it's going to look interesting. I think with everything being said, it's going to be interesting. It ain't going to come no better than the way it is now. We're going to get a good Tank. We're going to get a good Lamont Roach because Lamont Roach figured it out. He cracked the code. Now, if you get a 2, it's all about if Tank can figure out I'm still Tank. I'm gonna try to do it. But if Lamont cracked the code and he know how to do it, like I said, if Lamont figured Tank out and they do a 2 and he still got him figured out, I don't know. I'm gonna tell you if Lamont Roach comes and does the Lamont Roach yet again. Let me tell you something. Tank gonna be in trouble if Lamont come out and do it again, because Lamont did a good thing in that first fight, and to come and do it again, that's gonna be real interesting. That's gonna be something interesting from my end of the seat. Real interesting. That's what I think. It's gonna be a real interesting. It's gonna be real interesting if Lamont come out and do it again. Woo! It's gonna be super interesting. Super interesting. If that could be done. The way I think it can be. I say that because, Lamont Roach went and did what he had to do the first fight, and you come out and you think, hey, it's time to do it again. Are we gonna get it again? Who knows? But it's time to do it again. And I think if that number 2 is scheduled, no matter what we get Tank fight next, it's gonna be interesting. I think no matter what fight. I think the better schedule is Lamont Roach, if you ask me, but should we be scheduling Shakur? I think we need to let Shakur figure out Shakur. You get back to yourself, your best self. We talk about it. One being their best self, and that's one thing we're gonna say. Shakur needs to get to his best self because what I saw this weekend, I don't think that could go up against Tank like that. You know, I think we gotta understand what's going on left and right, and we have to ask ourselves, can we get our best Tank? Can we? I mean, can we get our best Shakur? And I don't think right now is the case. The case of the matter. I don't think we're gonna get our best Shakur for many of reasons because I just don't think it's gonna go that way. And I understand a lot of you have stuff to say, and a lot of you understand, what's going on, one versus the other. And I say that because there's a lot of good coming from a good old Shakur fight. But I'm telling you, what I saw this weekend was not the Shakur I thought we was gonna get. And it's one of those things where you want to get the best version of Shakur and the best version of anybody at that point. You know what I mean? Like you want to get the best version of everybody, and I don't feel like we did. I feel like we didn't get the best version of what I thought should have been the best Shakur. So nonetheless, I think that we have to seriously ask ourselves, um, can we get that within this year? Probably not. I think if you're gonna do it, schedule it for late next year. Let him have a couple more fights and figure this out. You know, and then bring it up. I, I definitely want to see Lamont Roach versus Tank before I want to see Shakur Tank. So that's something entirely honestly, the way I look at it. I want to see one versus the other. And that's just because that's me, what I want to see. And that's just very simple to what I want to see. You know, I think that we could get a good Shakur Tank. I think we'd get an even better Lamont Roach Tank too. So I think that's the you ask me, I think that's the better schedule because I think we get a better second fight with Tank than we do. I think we get a better second fight with Lamont Roach Tank than we do Shakur Stevenson Tank because the Shakur I saw was not what I thought, not what I thought. It didn't show me enough that hey, now his last couple fights, I mean, listen, his last couple fights, we've seen some good Shakur, but this this one past weekend, I didn't see, definitively enough to say, hey, that's gonna be Tank. I'm telling you, I didn't see it the way many would have thought. Hey, I didn't see what everybody would have thought was like that. Hey, that I'm going to beat Tank. Look, and I understand many may not agree with me with that, but to me, I didn't. I didn't see it. I really didn't, and I know a lot may not want to agree over that. Um, but I didn't see it. So with that being said, I didn't see what many had thought was to be the next biggest fight with Shakur and for Tank. So yet another epi. Getting it out for you guys. Continuing to do that. Continuing to make sure you get your episodes and stuff like that. So nonetheless, I'm making sure that. So for you guys, I'm getting it. But this is another one. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. we draw to our end. This is The Weigh-In by Benoit Chestnut and normally Sebastian Romero, and he will return at some point. But please, always, I love when you guys ask me questions over DMs, over our email. I always try to answer as many of them as I can over the podcast, the episode. I try. If I did miss your question, um, always just still ask it. I'll always address it, but that was my partake. That the question was if Devin Haney and Tank fought, then I don't think Haney would win that fight. I don't think so. So, I always like to answer the questions. Those are great things, and I'll always answer those time and time again. I say this all the time. A few of you have texted me about what if we did a live Q&A on some of this boxing stuff and what we thought. It's possible, but we got to get enough interest to do something like that. So if we do, yeah, we could possibly get something together for that. But nonetheless, this is yet another episode of The Weigh-In and weighing out.